Usually we talk with Connor O'Gara on a Monday. We're going to talk to him on a Tuesday morning right now on halftime. We'll always appreciate a chance to speak with you, Connor, of course, national columnist, Saturday Down South. How you doing right now?
We're doing all right. You know, it's hurricane prep is, for those who have endured it, is an anxious time, but, you know, it's something that you do get a little bit used to. I mean, I've been down here for 9 years, so I'd like to say I'm somewhat used to it, but yeah, Milton looks like a beast, an absolute beast. So we are taking all precautions within our home. But yeah, it's an anxious time. Definitely not my favorite thing to go through.
Hopefully, we'll certainly be thinking of you as it comes ashore. Are you expecting what tomorrow morning, late tonight?
We're actually expecting it to be more of like Thursday now. It's kind of the look. It's probably going to be like. Probably early on Thursday, and then, you know, we're just going to see what the damage is. But hopefully tomorrow is a relatively normal day. That's kind of the expectation now with the latest forecast. But, yeah, I mean, it's when you're this far inland, it's more about, like, I don't want to lose power, I don't want to have flooding, and hopefully no sort of property damage. But, you know, so much of this is obviously out of our hands.
Speaking of normal, that what was normal was it was a crazy weekend in college football. Vanderbilt beating Alabama, Arkansas beating Tennessee. Connor, which one of these programs does this? You know, the Bama Tennessee. Which one of those losses hurts them more?
I think it hurts Bama more than it hurts Tennessee because I think with Bama, you have this invincibility that has obviously followed the Nick Saban era, and it followed into the Kalen DeBoer era with what we saw them do a week earlier against Georgia. And to have the defensive performance that they showed was alarming. And, yeah, maybe Bama will have better days on that side of the ball, but, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the clips that have been going around about Malachi Moore, the two-time Alabama captain, the guy who was representing Alabama at SEC media days, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good, and it was sort of a microcosm for the day that was. And when you don't have Nick Saban on that sideline to be able to troubleshoot your defensive issues, you can have these bad games. Now, bad games, nobody ever thinks of those as losing to Vandy, but you saw a group that was totally unprepared, could not make adjustments, didn't have the discipline that you needed to be able to win that football game. And it wasn't really fluky. I mean, that's kind of the thing. It's like Vandy, never let Alabama lead in that game. And they converted 12 of 18 on third down. Like, I just think for Alabama, big picture, it was a lot worse than it was for Tennessee, who had a bad day at the office, but I do think that better days are ahead for the Vols.
Well, there wasn't anything fluky about Arkansas's win over Tennessee, and what it was a masterful defensive performance by Travis Williams' unit, and an offense that for the first time held on to the football and did not turn it over. I think the second time this year, and Sam has said, I mean, and he's been saying it not just after the win, but even before it, that if the Razorbacks hold on to the football, he thinks they can play with anybody. And they certainly showed that against Tennessee. And I think it was really – I was just completely surprised. I think it says a lot about the game plan, that's the first time that Heupel's been shut out in the first half as a head coach.
You got to give all this praise for Travis Williams is so worthy. And Sam Pittman as well, because the job that he's done this season, I think, needs to be getting more attention. But Travis Williams is somebody that needs to be running his program. I think that since he has shown up at Arkansas and made those improvements to a unit that was a disaster in the final year that Barry Odom was there, I continue to say that guy continues to perplex SEC offenses. And there are very few guys that are more difficult to perplex than Josh Heupel. And he did it. I mean, in spades. Like, you know, I think we were coming off of the Oklahoma performance Tennessee had, and so it wasn't necessarily a surprise that they didn't, put up 40 points or something. But at the same time, they just had no answers whatsoever. And to see Nico Iamaleava so flustered that at the end of that game he runs out of bounds instead of attempting a last-ditch throw, that tells you all you need to know about how out of sorts he was. Someone that has been praised for his poise young in his career, and to see him totally just befuddled by what Arkansas was doing defensively, you got to tip your cap to that unit.
I got a couple more questions, Connor. First of all, which one of these teams, which one of their seasons ends Saturday? You get Ole Miss and LSU. One of them's going to get their second loss. Pretty much could knock them out of the playoff 12, especially if they have another stumble. Who do you got in this Ole Miss-LSU matchup?
I keep going back and forth. I think I'm going to go with Ole Miss, and I know that LSU has a lot of things working in its favor right now with the way that Garrett Nussmeier is playing. Not a lot of people are talking about how good he's been this year. I think he's been one of the 3 best SEC quarterbacks, one of the 5 or 10 best quarterbacks in all of college football really to this point. But at the same time, I do think that Ole Miss has a legitimate, all-world strength up front on that defensive line. And we've seen that week in, week out. We even saw that in the Kentucky game that they lost. I mean, that unit kind of kept them in it. And I do think that group is going to be in for a unique challenge with what LSU has, future first-round tackle prospects on the outside, protecting Garrett Nussmeier. That's important. But, man, I can't imagine Ole Miss is just kind of out of this playoff hunt this early, because I don't think they're going to run the table in SEC play if they lose this game. And that's more so the issue, because, 10-2, you can go 10-2 and still make the college football playoff in the 12-team field, obviously. But running the table with what these two teams have left seems really daunting. So I do agree. I think it is kind of a pseudo playoff elimination game. But I'll go with Ole Miss, despite the fact that I do like a lot of the things that LSU's been able to do since that opener.
What about A&M? Because this is a team right now that looks like they could very well end up with just one loss by the time it's the end of the regular season. They got to play Texas. And that was Connor Wigman that was quarterbacking them, 18 for 22 against Missouri. It was the same quarterback that just was completely confounded in the season opener against Notre Dame. He was incredible, and I thought that was going to be the best game of the weekend. Turned out it wasn't even close.
Connor Wigman, for those who have not followed his career, there's a reason why Texas A&M, with a new offensive coordinator and a new coaching staff, made the decision to give him the starting job. Okay, they didn't go out into the portal, and they didn't bring Will Howard over from Kansas State to follow and stay in the Colin Klein offense in the way that some expected. He ends up going to Ohio State. They went with Connor Wigman, who was Jimbo Fisher's highest-rated quarterback recruit since Jameis Winston, because this guy has so much talent. And I was so tired of having to defend it this entire offseason, of being like, man, before this guy went down, he was really showing some signs that he was capable of being one of the better quarterbacks in college football. And in that season opener against Notre Dame, he played poorly. Let's not make any mistake about it. He also played poorly against what might be the best secondary in college football that Notre Dame has, with Marcus Freeman and Al Golden with 8 months to prepare. And the blitzes that they were throwing at that guy without an established go-to receiver, he didn't look good. And Marcel Reed looked better against lesser competition. No disrespect to Arkansas. But even Arkansas, you saw, the passing game wasn't particularly good for A&M. I mean, Noah Thomas made a really nice play, but outside of that, they were limited offensively, and that's why Mike Elko went back to Connor Wigman. You saw it all come together in that game against Mizzou. Going up against Mizzou with 5 players on the defensive side of the ball lost to the NFL draft is a little bit different than going against that Notre Dame defense, and I thought it showed.
Connor, I know it's. I guess we're almost to the halfway point. Iowa State, BYU, Pittsburgh, 3 teams that are 5-0. Not necessarily 3 teams that people had high on their radar coming into the season. Iowa State, BYU, Pittsburgh, 0. One of them. How many of those 3 teams make the playoff 12?
I'm kind of leaning BYU. BYU. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, Kalani Sitake deserves so much credit for the job that he's done. One of the better coaches who really doesn't get that kind of love in college football. But you kind of map it out and look at their remaining schedule. And, going to Utah is going to be tough. But if they don't necessarily have Cam Rising, who knows? I mean, what that's going to look like week to week. Their schedule sets up really, really well after what they've been able to work through in the first part of the season, having already gone to SMU and won that game, and then being able to just blow out Kansas State. They're kind of setting themselves up. If there's going to be a one-loss Big 12 team to emerge, I think it's going to be BYU. I've been really, really impressed with what they've done, especially on the defensive side of the ball so far. It still feels like that conference, more likely than not, is just going to produce a multi-loss conference champ. It could be a 10-3 BYU, or maybe a 10-3 Big 12 champ that gets that automatic bid or something like that. But, man, they have really done a nice job kind of weathering the storm early on and being, I think, so far the cream of the crop in the Big 12.
Think of some of the conversations we've just had. It's just what you just finished with here. 3 teams that you would never say, hey, these teams may have a chance
before the season started, right?
A chance to make a playoff. That's right. We are talking about Vanderbilt beating Alabama, and Alabama still having a shot at a national title, for crying out loud. Access for the playoffs, and in fan bases' minds, not the thought of, well, we're trying to make a bowl game in which maybe a third to half of the team opts out, and we don't know the meaning of this bowl game. It's like its own standalone season. And those bowl games are mean something to those fans. It's just you have to make it up for yourself in some ways. This is good for college football right now, Connor. I mean, this is good for the sport.
So you're right. And I think this year is setting up like 2007, not 2007 from a standpoint of the number 2 team in the country is just going to lose every single week to like an unranked team, although last week certainly it felt like that. But I think that the team that will emerge as the national champion will have at least one moment that we look back on and go, wow, they lost to that team. That's what 2007 was. I know I don't need to tell Arkansas fans about the team that won a national championship that year because everybody and their mother thought that when LSU lost that game to Arkansas, LSU's national championship bid was over. And, of course, we know what happens after that, and they get a few bounces that go their way with a certain West Virginia loss. And, that's ultimately the type of chaos that year created. We're setting up for that right now. We are. I mean, there's only one unbeaten left in the SEC, and it's Texas, who, by the way, has only played one conference team so far, and it was Mississippi State. So make of that what you will. It does feel like it's an exciting time to talk about the sport because there's parity, and there's teams like Vanderbilt, there's teams like Arkansas who had a combined 1 win in SEC play last year, who have been able to go into the portal, find guys that are ready to play today, and be able to say, hey, we have a better chance of staying on the field with elite competition. And that makes the sport a little bit more even. And you know what? It doesn't mean that we're going to have all of a sudden like an out-of-nowhere team win a national championship. But just in terms of intrigue, I'm right there with you. I think there's been a lot more of that in the first part of this year.
Connor, we'll leave it there. And, hey, I will check in on you when the storm hits and afterwards. We'll be thinking of you. Stay safe, okay?
Guys, really appreciate that.
Thanks, Connor.
Connor O'Gara, national columnist, Saturday Down South, with us usually every other Monday. We had him on a Tuesday today.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.